Hello, everyone.
Hi, everyone.
We are back with a new episode. We are back in Guildhall School, Professor Podmore, right?
Yes, we're back in the Guildhall School, and this is going to be episode 21. Wow, we're really going through this. And I think it's important to point out that the links to the music that we're going to discuss today and the links to everything else we mention, just about everything else we mention, will be in the text with the podcast.
Yeah, we always actually edit, but thanks for reminding this, Jono. In all of the 20 episodes, I don't think we said it to our listeners, but you can access all of the references and further information about whatever we discuss. Like, we're not just making it up, right?
Yes, we're not just making it up. We really do have sources.
So for today's episode, Jono,
yes,
I need your help about pronunciations. You are the person of very good pronunciations of all sorts of languages. I wanted to unearth Soviet Tatar composer for this episode, but I think all I can do is to pronounce her name, Sofia. But I think it's going to be you that's going to announce.
Go for the surname.
But
so
also
it's Sofia Gubaidulina.
There we go. That's the wonderful pronunciation.
Thank you very much.
So that is what we're going to discuss today, and we're going to discuss her piece. That means alive and dead, but again.
Well, it's not quite. It's Latin, which is exactly the same as the Italian.
Okay, it's again pronunciation.
Vivente-Non vivente.
There we go.
Which is it's not really alive and dead. It's like living and non-living.
Okay.
So you wouldn't say a stone was dead, but it's non-living kind of thing. I think that's more the idea. I mean, it's interesting in the on the YouTube clip of this piece where we've been listening to it, how we've accessed it. The image that they've used is of a fossil, which was living and is now non-living.
Okay, that's very symbolic.
Yeah, yes, I thought it was quite nice. And Gubaidulina is an incredibly prolific composer. She did an enormous amount of compositions, but this is the only one really kind of functional piece of electronic music that she did.
Yeah, and also I learned about a synthesizer that is new to me, but it was an old synthesizer. It was composed with the ANS.
The ANS synthesizer.
So that's also going to be the focus of this episode, I think, today.
I think so, yes. The ANS is a fascinating thing.
Russian synthesizer.
Russian synthesizer. There was only one originally built, but then it was reconstructed and is now in the Theremin Center.
It's in a museum, Glinka Museum in Moscow.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And ANS, it's the ANS synthesizer because it's named after Alexander Nikolaevich Scriabin.
Oh, wow.
Thank you very much. Now, Scriabin was this very important 19th century Russian composer whose work was was highly influenced by two things. One was his kind of occultist beliefs.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
And the other one was that
color sounds.
Exactly, that he was a synesthetic. So that when he heard particular pitches, he saw particular colours. So there was some kind of cross wiring going on with his sensory perceptions.
Yeah, it says like this synthesizer. It says the technological basis of this invention was basically the method of photo-optic sound recording, which is used in cinematography, which was developed in the USA but also in Russia, and this made it possible to get just like synesthesia, a visible image of us, the waveform, but also basically
well, the reverse is possible, that you can take a visual image and turn it into a waveform. That's the thing.
Yeah. That's interesting. Really
well, that's one of the strange things with the early days of sound recording. Optical sound was really, really important because that was the one that was used in cinema, and it was also the way that you could synchronize the images with the sound by having a track of optical sound on the celluloid next to the images on the film itself. So how the ANS works, as I understand it, I'm sure there's somebody out there who's got a better idea what's going on. But basically, there are 5 discs, each with the waveforms of 144.
720 microtones.
Yeah. So what it is each disc plays 144 sine waves simultaneously by spinning in front of an electrocell. And then there are 5 discs, so that puts it up to 720 microtones. So each little sine wave, they're just slightly out of tune with each other.
Wow. It's really like it's what creates like what we are trying to explore with modular synthesizers today, or
massive clusters,
or
basically.
even the early acid works of Aphex Twin, that sort of stuff. So this is actually how it sounded. Here's an example sound.
Well, interestingly enough, when it comes to examples, that there is a virtual ANS synth, which is a standalone bit of software.
Let's make sure to link it in our episode.
We'll put the link down there. It's developed by this guy, Alexander Zolotov. And
yes, he also is someone who has developed trackers which make chip music, which generate chip tune, and that's I discovered Alexander Zolotov actually when I was doing my research in chip tune back in the day in 2019. Actually, with Facebook friends, so I have to tag
good. Well, we'll tag Alexander, and the software, it's standalone software, and I downloaded it this morning and got it working. So so how it works is the really interesting thing is that these discs are making these 720 microtonal sine waves. And the way that the particular sine waves are chosen to be audible is, again, by using light. So it's a very huge, very complex filter system, which is controlled, the pitch is controlled by physically drawing shapes onto a glass plate, which is covered in what they call mastics of tar. Mm-hmm. And so you literally scribble on it and you get a sound from it. Mm-hmm. And what's nice was, when I listened to the piece, I thought, oh well, they've got the ANS. She's got the ANS going, but she's obviously using tape because there were parts of it which were obviously reversed. But that's the great thing with using this plate system in the ANS is it can go. The light can go forwards or backwards. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that you get these very, very, very clear, obviously reversed sounds.
That makes maybe that must be that accounts for the sense of like this sounds in Vivente and non-Vivente that are like very much abrasive, but also still remaining clean and absorbing you into this sort of feeling that's coming and going towards you. Like it's not with panning, but it's with the frequency shifts.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, we still use light quite because I mean, all this technology was kind of replaced with transistors and voltage control in the 60s. But we still use light in a lot of ways in synthesizers and in music technology, in what's called Vactrols, which are basically kind of controllers for the little components that control voltages. They actually use a little light-emitting diode and a little photocell in a little box. And they have a particular sound to them, which you can hear in the percussive sounds in this track. That's the way that like photosensitive cells react and create voltages. It's not as sharp and as edgy as particularly digital, but also transistor technology. So there's a nice kind of wooden feeling to the percussion sounds. And I think that comes from using photocells rather than voltage controlled amplifiers.
So yeah, it's like it says composers were applying like black paint on a glass surface.
That's it, yeah.
Which then, as a result, the drawing is exposed to light.
Yeah.
And with this combination, we get that wood this warmer.
Well, it's basically the light that goes through the plate that has the drawing on it controls a massive bank of filters, and then the filters are filtering out this massive range of 720 sine waves that are generated by the sound generator, which is these 5 spinning discs. But also, the thing is, of course, this is technology from the 1930s.
Yeah, that's mad. Like, that's before Second World War. Like, so far, we have talked about composers with a span in 1950s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. I mean, this piece was
1970,
but the device dates back to ages ago. However, this composer, she was exploring novel methods, like which was referred to as like keep doing the wrong thing, like this her parents, or people around her who were very Christian in an atheist state. Also,
and it was particularly Russian Orthodox Christianity, wasn't it?
Yes. But she got to work with musicologist and conductor Pyotr Maschaninov, who was her third husband. And it was him that taught her these, go beyond the 12 tones. So that's when she explored like Fibonacci series.
Yes. And
here now we are talking about a device which goes beyond all of that. So in her classical compositions, which she's known for more, she was already exploring techniques beyond the 12-tone system.
Well, this was an interesting thing with her as a composer, as a personality, was that her big kind of spiritual drive was this idea of transcendence, which of course in the Soviet times was a metaphor for transcending the control of the state, I think. So it was like a kind of making a link between the spiritual and the physical all the time. And it's interesting again that with the ANS synthesizer that there's this connection with Scriabin and this kind of big spiritualist or spiritual background to it all, which is very un-Soviet. But at the same time, the actual synthesizer, the machine that she's working on here, was developed in that massive explosion of technological excellence that came after the Russian Revolution. But before the horrors of the Second World War and all the rest of it. So, I mean, she's right in the middle of a really fascinating time in human history.
Yeah. I mean, it's like an intersection of all sorts of events, but also musically in techniques. So I was trying to quote this Russian conductor, Rostropovich.
Rostropovich, yes.
Rostropovich. So he recalls once visiting her home and basically looking at one of her works in progress, and then he says, the manuscript or maybe the score that looked like engineer's drawing. And like something for like a drawn for a computer, or so it's like he observed like very carefully drawn lines. When he asked her about it, all she said was, "Never mind, that's just my business." So apparently this composition of sketches indicates that she was using these mathematical structures, which reminds us, actually, when I listen to the piece, I can hear some parallels between this dark piece and the darkness of Xenakis that we covered before.
Yes.
Another mathematical approach here. So that is a contrast between, praising Christianity and these sounds, I think, like very, very avant-garde.
Yeah.
And it turns out back in 2012, Sofia was in the UK in South Bank Centre in a festival called The Rest Is
The Rest Is Noise.
Noise Festival.
To
give a talk together with our Pat. It could have been nice to see that. So this is just a 10-minute piece. However, it encompasses all sorts of spiritual elements and this mysticism, which might, I can't help associating it with this occultist approach of the inventor of ANS synthesizers. But also, she has her own like structural elements, mathematical elements.
The thing is that...
but also there's something very organic and human in it.
What's the most organic and human thing is... that it's not just a synthesizer. There are concrete sounds, and it's two human voices.
Yes, there's human voice.
A male voice and a female voice, and also bells. Now, those bells, that's not the synthesizer doing that. They're recordings of bells, and they're particularly, archaic, rustic bells. I mean, they may even just be pieces of random metal that are being slowly kind of bonged towards the end of the piece. And the climax of the whole thing really is with the female voice, isn't it? That's when it's most intense.
Sometimes it's the processing reminds me seagulls.
Yeah.
At 5 o'clock in the morning, when it feels like they are either laughing at you creepily.
Yes. Well, I grew up with the sound of seagulls in Liverpool, so it's extremely nostalgic for me hearing seagulls. But yes, and there is also the thing of the way that the synthesizer and the female voice in this piece mimic each other backwards and forwards. Lots of tape delay, lots of reverb, of course, because they were the big techniques at the time.
But there is almost like a call and response between the human voice and the ANS synthesizer, right? Absolutely. But one of the things that really struck me listening to the piece was that the climax is about 6 minutes 30, and then after that the bells come in, and it ends very gently. Yeah.
You know, like lots of electronic music pieces of this length, that are basically like the length of a cinema short kind of thing, often have a structure where all the big guns, like Poème Électronique too, with all the big power comes in at the end.
Yeah, it's like the textures grow into something bigger.
Yeah.
But here, I think you have a point.
It ends. It's one of the most beautiful parts of it is the end. It's very calm, isn't it?
Calm, but also it's not like a perfect cadence to it. It's almost like a imperfect cadence in that sense.
Well, there's a little kind of flourish at the end, isn't there? It's like a.
Exactly, that's
but the sort of general feeling, the aesthetic of the last sort of minute or so of the piece is really calm. It's really it's like she's asking the listener to achieve a state of calm in a way, which I think is really unlike the aesthetic of a lot of more macho composers. We could put it that way.
It must be associated with her numerous compositions in classical music. But also, it was not just classical. She did explore Western instruments as well as,
and lots of Japanese instruments.
Instruments of other geographies.
Yes, there's a one of her pieces is for one player playing 3 kotos, I think. Three different sorts of koto. So she was always exploring different sound worlds and different techniques, and that's surprising in its own right. In that this is the only piece of her electronic piece of hers. I would have thought with someone that exploratory that she would have actually done more electronic music pieces over the years.
Yeah, it's also possibly a result of her basically having to open up to the outside world, because she was on a blacklist of no performance list in the Soviet Russia. So which meant maybe that sounds super difficult, but she found more space in the outside world.
Yeah. Yes, of course. If you're on a blacklist and you can't compose music openly, then sitting at home with just a piano and some manuscript paper is the way to do it, really, isn't it? Rather than going and booking a studio. And yeah. One thing about the AMS synthesizer is because of its not just because of its optical nature, but there's a kind of link there, is that it was used a lot in film scores. And one of the composers that used the machine the most was a guy called Artemiev, who did the film score for a lot of Tarkovsky films, particularly Solaris.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
The Russian version.
Yes.
The original version.
The original Russian version. So it's Andrei Tarkovsky's Solaris, in which the ANS works perfectly to create this otherworldly atmosphere all the time.
Let's have a link to that.
Absolutely, yeah. And the fact that it's microtonal, so the idea was to create a completely new spectra of sound, but it has a very strange kind of harmony. It's a lot of fun. I mean, I'm looking forward to spending more time playing with my virtual ANS over the next couple of weeks.
I think there's a lot for recreating this virtual design of a synthesizer.
Absolutely.
And to Sofia for her contribution to electronic music history by using this instrument in her compositions.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, there was... the other thing, of course, is there was a link with another important female electronic music composer who we will cover, I'm sure, at some point, Daphne Oram.
Of course, obviously.
Because the Oramics machine, the hair machine that she invented and created, was also based on optical sound.
Oh yeah, we have to cover her at some point, of course.
Yeah. So optical sound was one of the big ways of generating sound. It's, as I say, went out of fashion in the 60s because of the creation of transistors. So thanks for listening, everyone. And enjoy listening to Sofia's fabulous electronic piece, Vivente-Non Vivente.
There we go. Thank you.